aspect of the game that really drives the whole game, of course. The fact that you could be bluffing when you're betting now brings in so many more things for me to think about. If you were just bidding, and I'm going, okay, she thinks she has the best hand, do I have her beat or not? That's such a more simple kind of decision to make, right? If there's no way for you to just have nothing.
Right. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And now we're going to step away from poker for a minute and talk about Grateful Dead.
Okay.
You've been to 125 or over 125 Grateful Dead shows?
Yes.
What's Howard Lederer like at a Dead show?
Wow, I wouldn't even remember. I mean, I haven't been to a Dead show, of course, since 1995.
That's a lot of shows.
It was a lot of shows. I went to Dead shows for about 14 years. From 81 was my first show. My last show was 95. So it's not that, when you think about it, it was 8-10 shows a year. And I lived in New York for most of those years. And they would just set up shop at the Madison Square Garden. They might play 6, 7, 8 shows right there. Just they'd play 2 or 3 nights, then take a night off, 2 or 3 nights, selling out like every night. It was like their home away from home on the East Coast. So I'd go to those shows, almost all of them, and I'd catch maybe I'd go up to Syracuse or down to Washington D.C. or I would travel a little bit. I certainly was no crazy Bill Walton over 500 shows.
Wow.
Now he was going to shows longer than me, but still, that's a much more serious number than 125, particularly when you live in New York. So I didn't have to travel that much to do it. But look, I love the Grateful Dead, and every show was different, and I had a lot of fun at those shows.
You still see a lot of shows, right?
I do not go to Dead shows.
No, not Dead shows.
Oh.
Just shows in general.
I go to music
a lot of
shows.
music shows.
Yeah. I love music. I love all kinds of music. And
I remember someone telling me that you and maybe it was Eric or somebody, you were going to maybe like it was a Kanye show or.
That was New Year's this last year.
How was that? I can't see you guys at a Kanye show. It's just funny.
I'm that white and that old.
No, it's just funny to think about.
That was a great show.
Yeah.
He's a great live act if you haven't seen him live. Great live act. Really just gets the whole. He gets the audience going in those shows. Yeah, really good.
All right. You've said in the past that your dad never lost a game to you on purpose when you were at home.
In chess.
Right.
Or really any game, yeah.
So I have to ask you, do you do the same with your son?
What I do with my son, like when we're playing chess, is I'll try and help him while we're playing. Okay. Instead of just flat out competing and crushing him. And you have to understand, I'm a much, much better player at chess than my father ever was. I mean, I took it very seriously. I got to about master strength. My father would probably beat your average player, but he wasn't, a very good player. So if I really tried my hardest against him, it would just be ridiculous. I beat him in 6 moves, every game. I mean, really wouldn't be very useful. So I'll kind of let him make his mistakes, and then I'll talk to him about why, hey, maybe you should try this. So he's gotten 1 draw against me, where I'm helping him along.
Right.
He's making some of the moves, but on some critical mistakes, I'll correct him, So yeah, I have a little different approach to it than my dad. My dad really was crushing me when I was 7. And then I picked the game back up. I mean, he crushed my spirit for about 8 years there. And now I'm 15, and I'm starting to take the game seriously again. And he beat me. I remember I started counting because I could feel like I was starting to catch up a little bit. And he beat me the first 30 games in a row again, once I reacquired an interest in the game. And then I beat him games 31 and 32. And then he quit me for life.
Oh, that's it. No more.
He said no more. Now, some might say he was being a spoiled sport, and they might be right. but his story, if you were to believe him, is that he, of course, always wanted me to get better, and he felt like I was getting so much better so quickly that he was never going to be able to beat me again, and he wasn't going to be able to help me get better. He always felt like by beating me, he's helping my game. So what he did do, though, was he knew a couple of players that ran a chess club. There was the Concord Chess Club. Met once a week at some public building somewhere in a park. and I started playing there. You know, with guys that were
Pretty good.
pretty good, pretty good. Certainly better than my dad.
All right, in a past interview, you listed winning the main event as your career ambition. Let's say
Really?
it never happens.
Okay, that was a while ago. If
Okay.
I said that, because
Yeah.
that's not very realistic right now.
Right, but you did say
Right,
that.
yes.
So if it never happens, how will you look back on your career?
I'll never be satisfied because I could have always won more tournaments. I could have always become a better player. In terms of the main event, again,
It's a long shot now.
being such an old guy and having played, you know, for first time in '87, actually I finished 5th the first time I played in the main event. I think 163 players. Certainly 23, 20, I think it was 23. Got down to, or it might have been 22, whatever, but young.
Yeah.
And 163 players. I've got a lot of ambition and a lot of confidence that I'm going to become one of the best players in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Very reasonable. In fact, one might expect. It wouldn't have been unreasonable for me to go, you know, I'm going to win this someday.
Sure.
Got close. I'm going to be one of the best players. I'm going to have 40 shots at this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I can win a 160 player tournament.
Now.
You know, it's just one of those things, right, where you keep getting better, and the goal keeps moving farther and farther away, and you know, now you have to be, you know, and what's interesting is, so I finished 5th out of like 163 players, and then had a really bad dry spell in that main event. You know, had some success in other World Series tournaments. Obviously, had won a couple of bracelets.
Mm-hmm.
I had no success in that main event until '93, where I finished 19th out of 839.
It's very strong.
Strong. And I made about the same amount of money they made in 1987. And if you sort of divide my place by the total number, about the same finish. 5th in '87, same kind of result, getting knocked out middle of day 4, having a nice run, but not extraordinary, and made about the same amount of money, 40, 50,000, but 19th now, a lot farther away. Then 2 years later in '85, I finished 140th or so out of 5,600 players. Again, do the math.
Same thing.
Same thing, about 50,000, about the same percentage of the field I beat, and now all of a sudden it's 100. It's almost as many players as I had to beat to win it.
Yeah.
Right? So I had to get through 5,500 players to have the same chance that I had in '87.
Yeah.
When you start comparing the fact that I basically had the same result 3 times, but 5th, 19th, 140th, you know, you have to be realistic. So I'm not going to call my career a failure if I don't win the main event at this point.
All right, last question. The future of poker. What are you looking forward to, and what are you most afraid of?
Well, you know, I guess one of the things I fear is if those that don't understand the game and the beauty of the game would, you know, lump us in and somehow demonize us, and, you know, feel like it's their right to tell us what we can and cannot do in the privacy of our own home, and set our game back in the U.S. I mean, one of the things, I am thrilled and excited, and I love the idea that our game, you know, I mean, poker in the games world is like our jazz. You know, I think it's the greatest game in the world. Better than any other game in terms of just what it makes you go through to get good at it, and the mathematical implications. You know, pick up Bill Chen's book and you see the math that really goes into poker. And there's a reason why the world's best, you know, at least ring game poker player is still a human, and not a computer. It's a more complicated game than chess, in its own way. I love the game, and it's our jazz, and we've given it to the rest of the world, and they love it. And we have people here that are holding us back. So